Discover the incredible journey of Genghis Khan, how one warrior transformed history forever. Jake stood in front of his classroom, his heart sinking as he glanced around at the faces of his students' heads bowed, fingers tapping incessantly on their smartphones. The weight of the past month crushed down upon him like a leaden fog. Each day felt like a battle against apathy, the flickering screens drowning out his passion for history. They were supposed to be learning about the transformative stories that defined humanity, yet here they were, lost in a digital abyss. This isn't what I wanted. The thought gnawed at him, a cruel reminder of his dreams slipping through his fingers. He had fought hard for this career, pouring his heart into lesson plans filled with tales of valor, loyalty, and trials. But with test scores dwindling and a school board eager to eliminate anything deviating from the standardized curriculum, Jake felt like a soldier without a sword, disarmed and desperate. His thoughts spiraled. Would they pull the rug out from under him? The fear of inadequacy gnawed at him, an uninvited companion that whispered, would he ever inspire them? On an especially dreary afternoon, the relentless rain tapped against his childhood home's attic, where he stumbled upon yellowed letters and journals wrapped in dust. He pulled them out, shivers coursing through him. The stories within spoke of an ancestor who once rode alongside Genghis Khan, grit, sacrifices, and the ancient struggles for unity that shaped history. Memories of bedtime stories raced back, filling him with a sense of purpose. Here, he felt, lay the key to unlocking interest in his students. What could be more compelling than a direct connection to a fierce warrior who battled for his people? Before he could decide on how to present these newfound tales, doubt crept in. Would his colleagues, with their skeptical glances, see this as trivial? They had been preaching about raising test scores, dismissing depth for the sake of surface knowledge. Jake wrestled with his conscience. Should he risk everything to bring the stories to life, or fall in line to protect his job? The tension eclipsed him like a storm cloud, whispering, what if you fail? The moment Jake dared to share his family's legacy with the class, a shift pulsed through the air. As he recounted the resilience of a warrior's journey, he could feel their curiosity tentatively awakening. But a sense of dread loomed. What if the administration deemed this exploration unnecessary? Each day, he found himself retreating more into a conventional lesson plan, the widening gulf between him and his students oppressive. The world of history began to feel like a foreign land, full of promises unfulfilled. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the school year rolled on, an unsettling revelation surged through Jake. A student uncovered one of the letters in a distracted moment, the floodgates of intrigue bursting open in the classroom. The teacher's heart raced with hope, but that hope was swiftly crushed under the scrutiny of the administration. Could he weave the essence of these tales without drawing their ire? The thought threatened to suffocate him, inching him closer to retreat. With mounting pressure and anxiety weighing heavy on his chest, Jake hovered at the edge of a decision. Would he risk everything for a chance to ignite a passion in his students? Every rehearsal, every story, brought him to a critical juncture. He was no longer fighting just for a curriculum but rather for his students' connection to their own stories. The question pulsed between them, could history reveal answers to the challenges they face today? As he prepared for the school board presentation, Jake's resolve wavered. Would he stand tall, embracing the uncertainty brewing within? His mind thrashed like a trapped animal, desperate for freedom. Would his voice soar or falter as he faced the stakes of his conviction, the chance to redefine not just his career but the futures of those hungry for knowledge? The room held its breath, and he knew he was at a pivotal moment. The weight of history hung in the air, begging for resolution, but the path remained obscured. A haunting uncertainty locked in his heart. The day of the school board presentation dawned, a bleak sky looming overhead like a forecast of impending failure. Jake stood before the mirror, the reflection staring back was a man caught between two worlds, one of measured expectations, the other steeped in raw potential and uncharted territory. He ran his fingers through his hair, trying to brush away the spiraling doubt that plagued him. Moments before leaving, he stared at the letters from the attic, their fragile pages bearing witness to a lineage rich with struggle and triumph. He felt a tug. It was time to claim his voice, not just for himself, but for the echoes of the past that had long been silenced. As he stepped into the meeting room, the atmosphere was thick with formality. Administrators sat in a semicircle, their expressions veiled but their authority palpable. Jake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their judgment pressing down on his shoulders. His heart raced, the connection to his ancestor whispering encouragement to believe in the narrative he had woven. One truth burned brightly within him: the lives of his students were tied to the past, as were the lessons sheathed within it. They deserved more. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity today," Jake began, his voice steadying slightly as he shifted through his presentation slides, each click resonating like a hammer on an anvil. He spoke of Genghis Khan's journey, not just as a historical figure, but as a person shaped by adversity much like his students. With each story he shared, he could see the flicker of interest igniting in their eyes. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. Yet as he continued, the skepticism of the board members became increasingly evident. Their crossed arms, quizzical brows, and the occasional whisper of disapproval suffocated him, as if they were trying to smother the fire he was trying to light. "How does this relate to our curriculum and standardized testing?" one administrator interjected, cutting through the fervent rhythm of his delivery, her voice sharp and dismissive. That question loomed like an iron gate between him and the breakthrough he yearned for. Should he respond by redirecting to the rote memorization of dates and events, or should he push against the constraints, challenging them to recognize the intrinsic value of storytelling in education? The internal battle raged. Would he sacrifice authenticity to placate the powers that be? Taking a breath, Jake anchored himself in the realization that education was not merely about passing tests, it was about empowering lives. The stories of our past can teach invaluable lessons about resilience, leadership, and unity, traits essential for navigating the world today, he articulated passionately, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. He saw a flicker of surprise spread across a few faces, the flickering light of possibility awakening hope. But as the meeting wore on, each response met with trepidation. He felt the venom of doubt seeping back into his psyche. Perhaps he was naive to think he could affect change. The walls of the room closed in, and he felt the specters of his insecurities gathering, whispering their taunts. Then, from the back of the room, a familiar face emerged, one of his students, murmuring under her breath the words of encouragement he had offered during class: "You matter. Your voice matters." It was an anchor in his storm, a reminder of the mission that enveloped him. Jake raised his chin, determination flooding through him. This isn't just about history, it's about fostering a thirst for knowledge and understanding in our youth. History is their story, and through it, we can navigate the currents of their future. As the presentation concluded, Jake knew he had crossed an irrevocable threshold. Whether he would be hailed as a visionary or condemned as a fool remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: the path ahead was fraught with consequences, and he was prepared to confront them head-on. What he didn't foresee was the ripple effect of his choices awaiting him beyond these walls, a challenge that would force him to confront not only the administration but his own limitations as an educator. The moment of truth was approaching, and all he could feel was the pulse of history, urging him forward. Would the power of his passion be enough to withstand the forces against him? The future of his students hung precariously in the balance, and Jake was about to discover just how far he was willing to go for their success. The boardroom had emptied, leaving Jake alone with the echo of his own heartbeat, a reminder of the fight he had just waged. He felt the adrenaline still coursing through him, fueling a mix of exhilaration and anxiety. The questions from the board reverberated in his mind, each a stark reminder of the battle lines drawn between tradition and innovation. He shut his eyes, momentarily blocking out the dim fluorescent lights overhead, trying to recenter within himself. He was determined to push back against the tide that seemed intent on erasing the humanity from education. Yet, as he gathered his materials, doubt crept in. Were his students ready for this shift? Could he be the catalyst they needed? Jake's sense of purpose was clashing with the hard skepticism of the system, and it was becoming increasingly clear that this wasn't just about one presentation, it was about revolutionizing how history was taught in his school. As he stepped out of the boardroom, the hallway felt suffocating, a constant reminder of the rigid structures enclosing his aspirations. Jake closed his eyes, inhaling sharply, the scent of cleaning solutions mixing with old paper, a stark illustration of the past lingering in the walls. He longed to break free, to create a new kind of narrative woven into the educational fabric, yet it felt like an uphill battle fraught with institutional limitations. Leaving the building, the cool air hit his face, a reminder of the world that existed beyond those sterile walls. He was met by the sight of students milling about, laughter ringing in the air. Something stirred within him as he watched them. The weight of disappointment was quickly replaced with resolve. He had to be their voice, their advocate, representing more than just grades and test scores. Returning home, his mind raced. He rifled through the letters he had collected from his ancestor. They spoke of struggles, dreams, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. What if he could channel that energy, turn the stories into something motivating for his students? What if the struggles of Genghis Khan could serve as a framework, a blueprint of resilience that they could carry into their lives? He paced the floor, formulating a new plan, desperate to shift the paradigm not only for himself but also for each of his students that faced emotional and intellectual challenges. Gathering the letters, he decided he would lay out a project that blended storytelling with experiential learning. It could involve role-playing historical scenarios, conducting debates, or even collaborative projects that demanded critical thinking. It could be revolutionary. Yet visions of possible pushback from the administration flickered through his mind like shadows. What if they rejected his ideas outright? What if he was left standing there, vulnerable and exposed? But then he thought of his students again, their eyes lit with curiosity when they discussed history in their own words, their laughter that followed engaging discussions about identity and purpose. Could he afford silence when they deserved a voice? Doubt coursed through him, but so did determination. A fire had been ignited, and Jake was not prepared to extinguish it. He resolved to invite his students into this new endeavor, hoping that their collective energy could help breach the barriers he was facing. With renewed purpose, he grabbed a pen and some paper, beginning to draft a plan to present a new curriculum proposal to the board. Each stroke of the pen marked a commitment, transforming his uncertainty into strategic steps. But as he scribbled down ideas, he suddenly recalled an unexpected conversation from 2 days earlier, one he had brushed aside in his whirlwind of thought. One of the administrators had mentioned an upcoming evaluation of innovative teaching practices. Could he seize this timing? Jake paused as he considered the risk. Could he vault himself into that space of risky creativity? This could either catapult him toward his vision or push him further into the shadows of complacency, depending on how it was received. The moment for him to act was incoming, and he felt a surge of urgency. Should he reach out to the skeptical administrators with his innovative ideas, or should he fine-tune his approach and prepare for a more strategic fight? Either way, he knew this was a crucial pivot point in his career and possibly his identity. Would his leap into the unknown lead him toward transformation, or would he slip back into the suffocating grasp of conformity? The clock was ticking, and he was about to find out. Jake sat at his kitchen table, the remnants of his earlier thoughts swirling, each one competing for his attention. Still clutching the pen, he flipped through the letters once more, the distinct words of his ancestor weaving through his mind like a tapestry of determination and courage. These were not just relics of the past, they were messages he could share, resonating with his students' struggles and dreams. But how would he present this to the board? Jake saw that 2 paths lay before him. The first, a straightforward presentation focusing solely on curriculum and outcomes, a safe strategy molded to fit the expectations of the administration. The second, an audacious leap into a teaching practice that embraced innovation, storytelling, and a visceral understanding of history, standing firmly against the tide of conventional education. The thought of the second path ignited something deep within him. Could he truly construct a narrative that not only captivated but also challenged his students? Whispers of self-doubt fluttered at the edges of his resolve. Could he ensure this would translate into meaningful learning? He could visualize it, a classroom alive with energy, students stepping into the shoes of historical figures, wrestling not just with dates and events, but with ethical dilemmas and personal choices that shaped every moment of their shared past. The interaction would breathe life into history, making it as relevant and visceral as the realities they faced daily. But with each aspiration came the haunting uncertainty of rejection. Jake recalled vividly the committee's initial skepticism. They clung to the belief that tradition alone held value. He could almost hear their dismissive murmurs in response to his ideas. That's when a thought crept in: what if his very passion was perceived as a threat? He pushed back against that notion. Jake began to strategize, meticulously drafting his proposal. He mapped out the key components, detailing how each story from the letters could translate into a lesson. Each historical figure would not just be studied but experienced. Moreover, he could structure a series of collaborative workshops where students could voice their insights and connect historical struggles to their own contemporary challenges, empowering them further. Jake paused, pen hovering over the page. Was he prepared for the skepticism this would ignite? He would need allies, students who not only supported his vision but were eager to be the pioneers of this revolution. The earlier celebration of student laughter rapidly morphed into a raw determination. If he was going to dare, he must do so alongside them, tapping into their restless energy. That night, a draft of the proposal emerged, laced with clarity and passion. Yet, still looming in the back of his mind were the faces of the board members, some willing to consider new ideas, others clinging to their ideologies. What if he wasn't enough in their eyes? Each brush with doubt became a catalyst, propelling him further toward a commitment to make this happen. He recalled the conversation about the upcoming evaluation of innovative teaching practices, a sliver of hope igniting within him. This was his moment to present not just a curriculum but a vision, a call to action. Yet something in Jake's gut cringed at the thought: could he risk being seen as insubordinate? Determined to quell that trepidation, Jake took a deep breath. He had the stories, the passion, the groundwork, the specifics to make his case compelling. Still, the outcome hung uncertain like a storm cloud overhead. He decided it was time to chat with his students to gauge their enthusiasm and willingness to embark on this journey with him. As he prepared for their first gathering, he couldn't shake the growing anxiety. Would they embrace this transformative opportunity? Every heartbeat echoed with anticipation. Gathering his thoughts, Jake stepped into the hallway, where students would soon bubble with curiosity and excitement. He felt the weight of expectation resting heavily on his shoulders, along with the incredible promise of what could evolve from this idea. The day for confrontation drew near, and with it, the pivotal question remained: would he step boldly into uncharted waters, or retreat into the familiar embrace of the status quo? As he opened the door to the classroom, ready to invite them in, a singular thought thrummed through him: he would not just ask the students to take this leap, he would join them. And in that shared uncertainty lay the potential for everything to change. Was he ready to awaken the sleeping giants of history together with them? The answer lingered, waiting to unfold. Jake paced the classroom, anguish and anticipation ricocheting within him as he awaited the arrival of his students. His mind raced through the scenario unfolding before him: would they see him as a guide or merely a teacher? He had just opened the floodgates to an exhilarating yet terrifying expedition into their collective learning. As students trickled in, their chatter filled the room like a static hum. He could feel their curiosity and exuberance, but also an undercurrent of skepticism. Would they embrace the challenge he wanted to propose? Would they conjure the same passionate energy he felt reading those letters from the past? Jake took a moment to calm himself. He positioned his notes, a rough outline of his vision, on the desk, struggling to arrange his tangled thoughts into something coherent. With a deep breath, he stood at the front, trying to suppress the tremor in his voice. "All right, everyone, I've been working on something that might change how we think about history. I want to invite you on a journey." Blank stares met him, the uncertainty palpable. Jake forged ahead. He spoke of the letters, the stories they contained, and how they acted as vessels connecting their lives with history. Imagine stepping back in time, becoming Genghis Khan for a day, feeling the weight of your decisions. What choices would you make? How would they affect your people? Some students leaned in, intrigued, while others continued to blink uncomprehendingly. A girl in the back, Sophia, raised her hand. But, Mr. Fisher, what do we even care about Genghis Khan? He lived ages ago. Her question pierced through the air, and Jake sensed a collective exhale. Honesty flashed across his heart. Perhaps he had underestimated the chasm of relevance he needed to bridge. That's a fair point, he acknowledged, taking a cautious step forward into their skepticism. History often feels like a distant world, but what if I told you that his decisions regarding unity and governance can teach us how to navigate modern conflicts? The ethical dilemmas of war, leadership, and human freedom, these are as relevant now as they ever were. He paused, gauging their responses. Some brows furrowed, while others sparked with a flicker of understanding. His resolve solidified, he wouldn't abandon them now. I want us to develop this understanding together. We can turn textbooks into stories, struggles into dialogues. You guys hold the power to shape how we interpret this past. At that moment, a young man, Tom, chimed in. But, Mr. Fisher, if we become those characters, what if we disagree with their choices? Jake's heart raced at the prospect, excitement and anxiety mingling in equal measure. Could he embrace that possible conflict? That's exactly the point, he said, COVID-19 lifting his spirits. History isn't about veneration but understanding. It involves questioning, dissecting the actions of individuals like Genghis Khan, and finding relevance in their humanity. The discussion took off. Questions darted back and forth like fireflies, some philosophical, some practical. Jake felt the room pulse with shared excitement. Their ideas were asserting themselves like ancient warriors reclaiming their legacy. As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Jake knew he had ignited something within them. But alongside elation flickered his doubts. The board meeting loomed ahead. Would his students' burgeoning enthusiasm withstand the withering scrutiny of the administration? After the lesson, he lingered in the classroom, a mix of thrill and uncertainty gnawing at him. The tide he had wanted to catch now pulsed at the edges of his conscience, swelling with potential yet laced with risk. He recognized a germ of fear rooted deep in his core. What if this moment was a fleeting illusion? What if he couldn't harness this energy into lasting impact? He had to confront the board, articulate this idea even more passionately, and communicate the student's seal. Suddenly, a thought hit him like a bolt of lightning. What if student advocacy became part of the presentation? If they were eager to take this leap with him, why not let them voice that commitment? It would add weight to his proposal and expose their engagement, making it less about his ambitions and more about their collective future. The time had come to face the board. His moment for confrontation was fast approaching. Would he take this bold step into vulnerability, risk the status quo, and trust the passion of his students, or would he buckle under the weight of doubt? Jake knew the answer had to come soon. The next chapter of this unfolding journey lay at the intersection of courage and commitment. Would he and his students rise to the challenge together, or falter against the fears that whispered their names? The morning sun cast soft rays through the classroom windows, illuminating the chaos of notes and projects scattered across Jake's desk. Today was not just another day, it was a pivotal moment. The board meeting loomed just hours away, and he felt the tension coiling within him, an ever-tightening spring of anticipation and dread. As he prepared, his thoughts spiraled into a whirlwind of doubt and determination. He envisioned the board members, stern, skeptical faces assessing his every word. For a fraction of a moment, the weight of their skepticism felt like a solid wall, impeding his progress. Would they understand the energy and enthusiasm his students radiated? Or would they cast aside his passionate plea for educational innovation as whimsical idealism? Jake leaned against his desk, pondering his strategy. Should he present hard data on engagement and performance, or should he speak from the heart, weaving in his students' voices? The thought of advocating for others sent a shot of adrenaline through him. It was their beliefs, their passions, he needed to carry into the meeting. After all, he wasn't alone in this endeavor, they were the torchbearers of the new learning philosophy he sought to embody. As he prepared, he felt drawn back to the very essence of what he wanted to achieve, making history relevant, personal, and deeply engaging for young minds. Every question, challenge, and even disagreement he faced from his students the previous day surfaced in his thoughts. Each moment had sparked an opportunity for exploration that he needed to share with the board. The revelation struck him that he could ask students to write their own letters, artifacts that encapsulated their feelings about history and its relevance today. With renewed vigor, Jake hastily drafted an outline for the board presentation. He would anchor it with student experiences, including excerpts of their writings reflecting on historical decisions and modern-day implications. But more importantly, he would create space for a few students to join him in person, allowing them to voice their insights and commitment to this transformative approach. The bell for third period rang, providing a natural break in his frenzied thoughts. Students filed in, the energy palpable as they gathered to discuss their next project. Jake seized the opportunity, eager to share his vision for the board meeting and rally their support. "I've been thinking about how we can all present our ideas together. It needs to be more than just me. You are part of this." Excitement mixed with uncertainty coursed through the room. Tom, the same student who had challenged him before, raised his hand. "Are you sure they'll listen, Mr. Fisher? What if they don't care what we think?" Jake felt the flicker of doubt again, echoing in Tom's words. "That's exactly why we need to show them," he replied, determination simmering just below the surface. "Your voices matter, and I believe they can't dismiss us if we present a unified front." In the days leading up to the meeting, Jake watched his students transform as they embraced the responsibility of being advocates for their own education. Each letter they crafted carved a deeper connection to history, and the more he observed, the more he recognized something unexpected rising within him, a sense of fulfillment he hadn't anticipated. On the day of the meeting, Jake stood at the threshold of the conference room, his stomach churning with nervous energy. Educators often carried the burden to persuade, yet he felt a profound shift. He was no longer just representing himself but something larger, the hope of his students, their ideas, and their unwavering belief in the value of navigating history together. His heart raced. Would they accept his vision, or would they position themselves as gatekeepers, denying opportunity? Taking a deep breath, Jake pushed open the doors, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. He locked eyes with the board members, adrenaline surging and his mind spinning with the chance to transform doubt into possibility. But just as he began to speak, a flurry of laughter erupted from the back. His students had arrived, ready to stand by him. With their support anchoring him, he could sense that an unprecedented journey was set in motion. As he prepared to address the first question, an unsettling thought gripped him. Was he ready to fully embrace this partnership, acknowledging their contributions and facing any pushback head-on? Today would be a reckoning for each of them, a test of commitment and ideals that could change their futures. Jake stood before the board, the outline of his presentation flickering with the weight of expectation. The room was charged with an energy that felt almost electric. Glancing at his students, whose eager faces doubled as a mirror of his own hopes and fears, provided a short reprieve from the spiraling tension within him. He took a breath, searching for a grounding thought. This moment was not solely about him, it was about them. He began with a narrative, a simple yet powerful description of a student named Maya who had penned a letter reflecting on her awakening to history's echoes in the modern world. His voice was steady as he narrated her words, weaving them into a tapestry that embodied the essence of their collective mission. The expressions on the board members' faces began as neutral but gradually softened. Some leaned forward, intrigued. Yet, his heart raced with anxiety as he noticed the frowns of a few members. One of them, Mr. Hanley, who had been a longtime supporter of traditional teaching methods, crossed his arms skeptically. "Statistics are great, Mr. Fisher, but how can anecdotes like this change the way we teach history? Don't we need more concrete measures of success?" The question struck like a hammer. Jake's mind raced for a defense, grappling with the tightrope walk of merging qualitative and quantitative analyses. I understand the value of statistics, Mr. Hanley. However, education isn't just numbers, it's about igniting passion and curiosity. Maya's letter illustrates the transformation sparked by understanding our past. Numbers can often fail to convey the depth of that connection. As he spoke, Jake felt a flicker of internal resilience ignite within him. He had not expected to feel this way, but he was keenly aware that he was becoming the advocate he aspired to be. Perhaps it was the palpable excitement of his students in the audience that emboldened him, but with each word, he felt himself shedding layers of self-doubt. Let us look at the student's commitment, he continued, motioning to Sophia, another student who had taken the initiative to create a presentation centered around local history and its impact on their lives. She stepped forward, her eyes bright with intention. As she began to speak, her nervousness dissolved into confidence, her passion for the subject radiating in the room. Watching her articulate the connections she forged in her research allowed Jake to reassess his earlier fears. Perhaps this moment was more about the shared experience of learning than it was about personal apotheosis. A mutual discovery unfolded, the realization that leadership was less about authority and more about empowering others to find their voices. Still, Mr. Hanley's critical gaze lingered, and Jake knew this was far from over. He could feel the weight of the gaze from other board members assessing the changing dynamics of the meeting. Would they buy into this narrative? Would they see potential, or would they remain entrenched in outdated methodologies? Faced with this internal clash, Jake stepped deeper into the fray. Yes, students need measurable success. But we also must consider emotional engagement. This cannot be a binary evaluation of educational effectiveness. It's a balance. How do we find it? Each heartbeat echoed in the silence that followed. Jake knew he was at a juncture of reckoning, not just for the board but for himself. How could he adjust his approach to embody this balance? He needed to articulate a path forward that bridged both worlds, respect for tradition while ushering in innovation. Every glance exchanged among his students seemed to fortify him, turning him into a vessel for their ideas. The moment unfolded with a power he hadn't anticipated, a brewing storm of commitment, vulnerability, and the quest for what education could truly be. But just as he grasped this revelation, wordlessly surrendering to the partnership's potential, the board chair, Ms. Ellison, leaned forward. Jake, I appreciate your passion, but can you demonstrate a clear plan for implementation? Without a roadmap, how can we proceed? A roadmap. His mind whirled with thoughts. He had focused so fervently on passion and narrative that he had overlooked the concrete strategy needed to solidify this shift. What would the students need? What support systems would be crucial? As he stood there, overwhelmed yet resolute, a new chapter of his journey began to formulate, one rooted in action rather than mere inspiration. How could he weave data into their narrative, ensuring the board saw the tangible benefits of their unified approach? With the initial surge of conversation fizzling into a contemplative quiet, Jake clung to the hope nestled deep within him. This was more than just a presentation, it was an opportunity for evolution, one that demanded clarity, conviction, and perhaps most critically, a commitment to collaborative growth. Ready to face the board's scrutiny, he realized he was on the brink of a transformative moment. The question now loomed, could he craft that roadmap, not just for himself and the students, but for the future of education they all longed to change? As he gathered his thoughts, a sense of urgency ignited. The next step had to be decisive. Would he rise to the challenge? Jake left the boardroom, the weight of Ms. Ellison's question echoing in his mind. A roadmap? The idea clawed at him, pushing past his initial satisfaction with merely evoking passion. Reality crashed down, he had to translate inspiration into actionable steps, and fast. Without a clear plan, his vision would remain just that, a mere vision. The hallway, usually filled with chatter from students, stood starkly silent. He made his way to his classroom, heart pounding in his chest. Was he ready to be the educator they needed? Would his concepts of passion and engagement bridge the gap to measurable outcomes? As he walked, flashes of Sophia and Maya's unwavering commitment fueled his determination. Inside the classroom, he faced the wall of whiteboard markers glowing against the stark surface. He grabbed a few colors, visions swirling in his head. A plan began to formulate. He could organize an educational framework that integrated both the emotional engagement he'd championed and the metrics Mr. Hanley demanded. He scribbled furiously, creating a visual map of interconnected strategies. He considered their curriculum. How about integrating project-based learning where students could create presentations on historical connections to today while gathering data to support their insights? Each project could incorporate qualitative feedback from peers to measure emotional engagement, balanced with quantitative results from assignments. Students could chart their progress, reflecting on both their personal growth and academic results. But in the crux of that idea, a nagging thought crept in: would the board accept such a radical shift? Each time he had proposed something innovative, resistance had simmered under the surface. Doubts about his ability to navigate this politically charged environment flared like anger. Could he convince the board that data could emerge from passion, or would it only prove their point that he was not equipped to lead? As the classroom buzzed to life with the arrival of his students, Jake's resolve hardened. They deserved the best of him, his energy to ignite them, his commitment to elevating the conversation. Jake began to share his early ideas, gauging their reactions, searching for that spark of inspiration to grow bolder. "Okay, class. I have an idea," he began, laying out the concept of a new curriculum that combined their voices with research project-based emotional engagement tied to measurable outcomes. Eyes widened with unspoken excitement as they contemplated the prospect of driving their own learning. Sophia raised her hand. "We could create a visual history project. Like a documentary, but different, something modern that connects past events to what's happening now." Others chimed in, each one building on the foundation, suggesting interactive timelines, digital diaries, and even community outreach presentations. Their collective fervor coursed through the room like electricity. Fueled by their enthusiasm, Jake felt himself becoming more adept at navigating this complexity. For the first time, he could see that he was not solely a teacher, he was also a facilitator in the revolution of their education. He viewed the problem through their eyes. This was not just about teaching history, it was about understanding its implications in a way that thrived on collaboration. But as the class activity developed, doubts loomed again. Would the board champion a curriculum born out of shared ideas rather than proving a prescribed curriculum? The vision felt perilously close to a cliff, hanging above the void of administrative approval. Jake paused, assessing the ambitious project they had begun. The excitement was palpable, but so was the fear of failure. Would their voices resonate beyond the classroom? He took a deep breath, grounding himself as he prepared to guide his students through these uncharted waters. Each suggestion bolstered his cautious hope, steering him toward clarity. Yet, a paralyzing thought crept in: the meeting with the board could still implode if clarity didn't accompany their enthusiasm. The moment simmered with potential. Could he channel this collective energy into a unified strategy that satisfied skeptics? This was the approach that would change everything for his students, balancing their engagement with essential metrics. Jake's hands tightened around the whiteboard marker as his thoughts crystallized. It was time to craft not just a roadmap but a journey, one that utilized every advantage of their shared excitement. But would he be able to solidify his burgeoning confidence into a concrete presentation? The clock was ticking, and the next board meeting loomed ahead like an impending storm. The pressure increased, forcing him to question whether he truly had what it took to stand up to the naysayers. He needed more than a plan, he needed to be cunning and agile enough to navigate the looming confrontation. The time had come to face his greatest challenge yet, to present a curriculum that dared to blend passion with quantifiable impact. Could his ideals withstand the scrutiny of those who believed in a rigid system? Could he truly revolutionize history education? Jake spent the evening buried in research and planning. Books stacked high on his desk formed a makeshift fortress around him, filled with insights from educators who had ventured down similar paths. He realized that he needed to connect the principles of engagement with solid metrics, and for that, real data was essential. His thoughts raced. How would he highlight both the emotional and factual aspects of historical events? The weight of self-doubt returned, heavy and suffocating. Jake's mind turned to Mr. Hanley. The stern demeanor of the board member often felt like an immovable wall. Could he find a space in Hanley's rigid framework for the vibrant life and voices his students had just exhibited? The meeting loomed, a concrete event that threatened to unravel the delicate vision he was trying to forge. As he constructed his presentation, Jake envisioned vividly articulated narratives that showcased emotional engagement entwined with historical context. He decided to incorporate video blogs from students, reflecting on lessons learned and the connections made to their lives today. Each piece would be underpinned by statistics, a blend of essays scored with rubrics focused on creativity and conventional exams that quantified knowledge retention. As he manipulated the data story he would tell, he started seeing a clearer pattern, one that gave voice to both engagement and result. Determined, he reached for the whiteboard again. The concepts flowed easier now, each colored marker dancing across the surface as he sketched timelines, project contexts, and outcomes. Okay, let's make sure this is not just a colorful pie chart but a narrative. He murmured, driven to create something that told the student's story but also encompassed measurable data that would satisfy skeptics. Bouncing ideas off music blaring through headphones, he envisioned the board meeting, how they would react to clips of students speaking passionately about their projects, their insights illuminating historical relevance. He could almost hear their questioning murmurs, punctuated by the echoes of applause from his students' unyielding voices. That idea ignited something within him. Perhaps their passion would resonate more than he initially believed. In the dim glow of his desk lamp, he practiced. Ladies and gentlemen, he began to articulate in the mirror, projecting his voice as though it were the actual boardroom. History isn't just a subject. It's a living, breathing narrative, rich with perspectives that inform our present and guide our future. Each practice session honed his delivery until he felt himself blending preparation with authenticity, slowly eradicating the nagging ghosts of self-doubt. The day of the board meeting arrived, slick with tension and anticipation. Colleagues buzzed in the hallway, discussing their agendas, but Jake felt isolated, a single figure on the precipice of potential transformation. As he stood in front of the glass wall of the boardroom, he caught glimpses of the board members settling into their seats, faces stoic and critical. What happened next would test his resolve and the vision he had painstakingly crafted. The door swung open, and he was beckoned in, heart racing, palms clammy. He took a deep breath, stepping over the threshold where passion would meet skepticism, a landscape fraught with peril yet brimming with possibility. Would he be able to translate the vibrant, hopeful energy of his classroom into a structure capable of standing up to criticism? The moment of truth arrived as he faced the panel, popularity versus resistance poised to clash. Would they listen? Would they understand? Would they allow history to come alive through the voices of those they aimed to educate? He opened his presentation, determined to prove that passion could be articulated through data as much as it could through emotion. The stakes were higher than ever, and the unknown eclipsed him. What would come next? Validation or rejection hung in the air like a breath held too long. Jake stepped into the boardroom, the air taut with expectation, yet he felt an underlying current of calm washing over him. He was armed with a proposal that blended educational engagement with quantifiable results, fueled by the stories and fervor of his students. Each breath deepened his conviction. This was not just about him, it was about igniting a change in how history was approached, perceived, and taught. As he began, Jake described his students' work, spotlighting the passion they had for history, a passion that surged awe-inspiringly when given the right framework to explore. He presented their letters, excerpts that resonated with the struggles and insights that shaped today's youth, drawing direct lines to their understanding of past conflicts and leadership. The board listened, their expressions a mix of skepticism and intrigue. Jake could feel their gazes piercing through him, weighing each syllable against their own values. His heart raced, but he persisted, emboldened by the unwavering support of the students seated behind him, who represented the collective voice of their generation. As he moved through his presentation, he meticulously highlighted how crafting a wider curriculum would not only raise engagement but also enhance academic outcomes. Research shows that project-based learning enhances retention by up to 70%, he stated, quoting studies he'd undertaken. He wove these facts into stories, emphasizing that history was more than just rote memorization, it was a dialogue that connected them all through shared human experience. A hand shot up from Mr. Hanley. "That's commendable, Jake, but how do we measure this against standardized tests? How can we ensure that we produce results that align with our district's goals?" The question sliced through the room, and for a fleeting moment, self-doubt crawled back into Jake's mind. What if he'd miscalculated the bridge between transformation and tradition? But then he recalled the fire in his students' eyes, the fierce commitment they'd shown, and the words of encouragement that reverberated in his heart. "One of the core principles is to develop performance benchmarks directly linked to projects," he replied. "We can design assessments that evaluate both knowledge retention and critical thinking skills." He proposed a dual system, structured assessments that could complement the innovative curriculum, inviting student feedback on their learning process while still honoring traditional metrics. Structures that included reflections on their projects, peer evaluations, and self-assessments, providing a holistic view of their learning journey. The board members exchanged glances, their skepticism beginning to wane. With growing confidence, Jake shifted gears. He showed video clips of students engaging passionately with history, bringing the proposal to life. The room filled with laughter, gasps, and nods of recognition as they watched his students tackle complex dilemmas through role-play, drawing parallels between historical consequences and contemporary issues. As his presentation unfolded, Jake felt a synergy growing in the room. Even Mr. Hanley's brows unfurled slightly, a hint of intrigue sparking in his eyes. Their skepticism turned to curiosity as they witnessed the tangible excitement and clarity that came from the innovative curriculum. Finally, he made a passionate appeal, "This is not just my dream, it's ours collectively. The opportunity for us to engage these students in their stories, this is vital. If we foster an education that resonates with them, we nurture critical thinkers, informed citizens, and empowered individuals who will shape the future." After the presentation, a dialogue unfolded. Board members engaged in serious discussion about implementation, confronted the challenges ahead, but what swelled beneath the surface was an undeniable sense that a paradigm shift was possible. In the ensuing days, news of Jake's innovative proposal rippled through the school. The subsequent discussions on its potential impact resonated deeply among faculty and staff alike. When the board's decision came in, they approved the proposal to pilot the new curriculum with the understanding of periodic assessments. The air buzzed with excitement, punctuated by cheers from his students who had come to stand beside him once more. Beyond the joy of validation, what thrummed in Jake's chest was something more profound, a newfound clarity and confidence. He had stepped into the void, embraced vulnerability, and transformed doubt into conviction. He achieved a blend of innovation and tradition that would pave the way for a future of enriched learning. Jake moved forward, invigorated, ready to develop and implement the new approach with his students' collaboration. In this moment, he recognized growth not merely as a destination but as an ongoing journey, one where history continued to breathe through the narratives of those who lived it. With the burgeoning seed of achievement firmly planted, he envisioned a classroom where every student, inspired, would forge their understanding with empowerment at the helm. The curtain had risen on a new era of education, one that echoed not only within classroom walls, but also rang through the lives they would touch. And it dawned on him, change had begun, and somewhere deep inside, he felt solid confidence, a recognition of competence found in authentic connections that transcended the past and shaped the present. His voice mattered, their voices mattered, and together they would tell stories that would forge the future. Now, it's your turn to take action. You need to subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this journey, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion. Remember, only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting our channel through these actions.